to 4632 North Florida Avenue, the Disco Dolls Studio, and we are at the Disco Dolls Gallery. And
Yay.
Featured First Friday artist.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes, Just Being Me is the name of your show.
Yes.
We have 5 abstract, expressionistic oil paintings behind me. 3 small, I would say, identifiable, expressionistic oil paintings of yourself. They're the portraits right over here.
Yep, they look good.
Yeah, they do look good.
They look really good. Yeah. I love on the show. I'm really excited.
Well, good. Well, let's get into the meat of this for our viewers.
Okay.
Michelle, Just Being Me. This is some sort of journey, and it started with being a watercolorist, and it has now graduated into, or I shouldn't say, it seamlessly has pointed you in the direction of being an oil painter. Let's start with that. Tell me the difference between oil painting and watercolor.
Well, it's interesting because I used to work in oil 20 years ago before I put painting aside for a while. And then when I came back to painting, I didn't have a designated space in my house to paint, and I also didn't have the money to go out and reinvest in oils. But I had watercolor available, so I just started working in watercolor, and that worked out well as a transition to get me back into painting. Also, the nature of watercolor, because watercolor, you put something down, you can't change it, right? So the nature of watercolor allowed me to foray into abstract. And that's something I wanted to do, didn't know how to get there because I was always so focused on drawing and reality, and it frustrated me, which is why I put my art away. So watercolor was a really great mechanism to get me into abstract because I would just like wet the paper, throw the paint down, see what happens, and then react to that. When I decided to, what happened is I got divorced, so I got a studio out of that because my ex-husband's office became my studio and I had space. And I was ready to move into, I wanted to work bigger and I wanted to go back to oil. I felt like I didn't know quite how to transition from the, just throwing it out there with the watercolor to the oil, because oil is more deliberate. You have to take the brush and throw it on and actually make a mark, right?
Right.
So that's where I started, where I got the idea of doing the self-portraits, working small like that, contained, and then working with something identifiable to give me sort of a structure to get comfortable with the medium again. And then the idea was, at the time I decided to grow my hair out, and I sort of thought, this could be interesting as a long-term project of documenting the changes emotionally and physically of growing my hair out, but also having gone through a divorce. And I was looking a lot at David Park. He's one of the San Francisco figurative artists. And it's interesting with him is he went from working at being an abstract expressionist to figurative. And so what he learned as an abstract artist, he imbued in his figurative art. And I look at his paintings and go, he says so much with so little,
Right.
One, boom, the nose, boom, the cheek, boom, I'm like, how do I do that? And so the self-portraits really helped me sort of check into that.
They're great. They are great. The view of you.
Yeah. And then with that confidence, I'm like, all right. And I started working a little bigger. And then I tried to do a large self-portrait, but I fell back into the getting very precious with it. And then one day Oh, I know. It was, I saw the interview with Larry Poons. We talked about the documentary, The Price of Everything. And Larry Poons talked about there's no process in painting. It's just painting. It's one brush. It's about color and marks, and just do it. Just take your brush, stick it in a color, put it on. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do that. And
Well, you bring up a really good point.
yeah.
Because as the abstract artist, we have to go into it for ourselves, I think. And then with different focal points all over the painting, different shapes and lines, but make a harmony and a rhythm. And I think that you do a really good job with that, Michelle. You do that with your self-portraits over here, and you do these 5 luscious big ones as well. We have many focal points to weave in and out of the painting as well. And,
Yeah.
and with creative work, we just have the figures. So the transition is seamless, I feel like. You do that, you achieve that. I find harmony in looking at them. I'm not sure that was your goal. This is all about authenticity and being true to yourself. But it does form a cohesive idea right there on the canvas.
Thank you.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I felt like I would do a piece, like the piece on above you, that blue piece at the top left. And I'd be like, oh my God, that was, yeah. And then I'm like, okay, so how do I love that. I'm like, okay, so let me keep working like that. But I found like in my head, if I try to repeat that, it doesn't work, right? If I try to like, okay, that's the style I want to go in, it didn't work because then I was just trying to copy it. So I learned for myself is like, don't copy what you did before, just be in the moment, feel what you feel, put it down, and see what happens.
And then in the end, isn't there any cleaning up to do with these compositions? Just because sometimes when we do just put it down and it can get a little crazy, or do you just leave it?
I kind of leave my work sit. So sometimes when I paint, I don't paint for hours at a time. It might be 10 minutes. It might be half an hour. It might be an hour. Basically, once I get to that point where I'm starting to overthink it, I stop. And I will actually work on several compositions in a setting. So I might work on one for 2 minutes, another one for 10, another one for half an hour. And so I always have stuff going on, big stuff, small stuff.
That leads me to your process. So you're working on about 5 paintings at a time, would you say?
Yeah, sometimes less, sometimes more, you know.
Good. Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time just letting them sit.
Right.
I just let them sit. I keep them in my studio. I'm working from home now, which is great because my job is I'm on the phone all day. So a lot of times when I'm on the phone talking to a person, and I'm having these long conversations, and I just turn my chair around and stare at the work while I'm talking on the phone. So I just let them sit and ruminate, and some of them I go back and I'm like, okay, now I know what it needs, and I'll go and work on that. And some of them I just sit and go, I think it's done,
Well, Michelle, we're going to be posting this, and the viewer can see Just Being Me on our gallery Instagram, which is discodolls_art. And also the video will be on the discodolls.com. And yes, and also if you'd like to come, or anyone would like to come for a gallery tour, they can go online. I think we have marked off on Wednesdays, but I'm flexible. And we talked about you coming and doing some more things with us here at the gallery, a one-on-one, if somebody wants to talk to the artist.
Oh, I'd love
okay
that.
With you?
I'd love that. I'd love to come in and talk to people face to face. I think I'd be so honored if anybody wanted to talk with me. So absolutely.
Can you ever imagine giving up painting again?
No.
No.
But I think it was good that I did, because I had reached a point where I wasn't doing it for me. and I wasn't getting, and I was frustrated, and I wasn't doing it for the right reasons. And now I'm at a point where my painting is coming from myself, and I'm not approaching it like, is it good enough for a gallery? Is it good enough for grad school? Is it good enough to sell? I'm just like, I'm painting, I want to share it. I just want to get better at it, you know?
Yeah, well, these are some lovely, lovely paintings, and this family that you have going on here, the authenticity of them is crystal clear. But I do like for the viewer, and when you go on our website, you can read your statement, your show statement of Just Being Me, and how these paintings came to be. I think that is part of abstract painting, and whether you start into it, it is about the way we feel as the renderer to the painting. And it comes out crystal clear in your paintings, Michelle. You do a fine job with lots of rhythm, lots of harmony, lots of focal points, shape, contrast, line, texture.
Thank you.
So you told us a little bit about your process. Do you feel like, as a relaxation, because you say you have to be more engaged in the oil, you might go back to watercolor?
Yeah, I am. Excuse me. I have a lot of thoughts in my head, and I'm so good. We went to the Frank Stella yesterday at the Tampa Museum, and for all the Tampa peeps, you need to go. Amazing.
You hear that? That's a plug for the Frank Stella exhibit at the Tampa Museum of Art.
And I wasn't a big fan of his, geometric stuff that he did, like in the 60s and 70s, but the collages with the different forms of printmaking, and then he ripped them up and putting them together. And I had been thinking of doing things like that. So that's always something that too was in the back of my head that I wanted to go back and to explore. So that's something will happen again, because I like having different modalities of working, because I get bored. So, sometimes you don't want to paint, but you want to create. So having different things going on allows for that continuous creativity. So once I'm no longer working in my home and I have my desk back, that's something I might start exploring, building on the watercolors I was doing, the abstracts, but start ripping them up and repurposing them, especially the ugly stuff, the stuff that doesn't work. Nothing's ever thrown away. You keep everything because it might turn into something else later, right? So we purpose everything, and find texture and different types of paper. And so I'm excited to that will be in my future as well.
Right. And also, I concur that going to see an abstract artist like Frank Stella, then coming back home, it is certainly stimulating, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And to the viewers, it's only going to be there 2 more months, so you should definitely go, right, Michelle?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
His works, and hopefully for us too as painters, our work will span as many years as his, starting in 1972, and then he just put one out in 2018. So,
yeah.
So I think that's a challenge for us, huh, Michelle? Keep on painting.
Yeah, and it's an inspiration to show that, if even somebody like Frank Stella, who has is known for such a definable style and type of work, you don't need to be pigeonholed there. You can keep pressing.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Is there anybody that's influenced you that you feel like, other than Parks or, de Kooning or Kandinsky, actually Pollock, Lee Krasner, Joan Mitchell, all of those abstract artists, can you come up with one that just went, oh, I never heard of them before? I like that.
I mentioned Larry Poons before. I think he's been for the last year since I found out about him from the documentary, he's been very influential, not just because of his work, but also his philosophy towards art and painting. You know, he talks about, you know, the success is in the studio.
Right.
He talks about successes in the studio and what you do. Everything else is just whatever. You know, if you have, you know, if he said, I'm quoting him or paraphrasing him, because I don't know if it's exact quote, but he talks about how if you make something to sell, you know, if you make something to sell so you can pay your rent, then you're successful at paying your rent, right? And commercial success doesn't mean that your art is good or bad. It just means it's commercially viable. And really, it's only the test of time that determines whether your art is good or not.
Well, yeah, I love that you're saying all that, because it just tells me that you're going to keep on painting and you just keep on going. You're only as good as your last painting. Is that true?
You're only as good as your last painting, and you're gonna make, and it's okay to make bad paintings. Okay to make ugly paintings. Like my work always, I've sort of embraced the idea that it's okay to be ugly. Like my work is always ugly at the beginning, and it's actually a good thing, because if it's too successful from the start, then doubt whether or not, like, should I keep working it? Should I not keep working it? But the ugly stuff, I have to keep working, and that's where you learn, you know.
Well, I'll tell you, you just did our first painting one lecture. Keep on going, no matter if it's ugly at first, right? It's all because it's in for sure.
Yeah. And there's always more paper, there's always more canvas, and again, you can repurpose it.
Right.
Over more paintings. I have a habit of doing something, thinking I like it, post it on Instagram, 2 months later decide I don't like it, and I paint over it, and I have friends going, oh, I love that painting. I go, yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. What do you mean? It was great. I'm like, no, I didn't like it. It wasn't good enough. I didn't like it. It sucked. I painted over.
Me too. Yeah, I think that we're allowed to. There are paintings, right? Yeah, and it's just like anything. But I love that. I love that you feel like, okay, I don't need that painting anymore because we can always do more paintings. Isn't that true? And I love the direction that your work is going in. One more time for our viewers, though, if you'd like to see this Michelle's work, Just Being Me, Disco Dolls Gallery Instagram is discodolls__art. And then our website, thediscodolls.com. You can book a tour with Michelle and I and see her work up close and personal. We do one at a time at the store with a mask and adhering to all those CDC regulations, correct?
Yes, we want everyone to be safe. We don't want anyone to get sick.
We do. Michelle, is there anything that you can add today to that what we haven't talked about? You really let us have a glimpse into your process, which to me, as the viewer, yes, I like to go and see the paintings, but I want to know, how did this artist do it? What were they thinking? What is it really? Because our interpretation is always different. And with this awesome little write-up that you have, and that we know that it is a personal journey, I think the viewer can look at them a little differently. And then again, I want to harken though to your academic skills are spot on.
Thank
Great
you.
points, all of it. Great perspective.
No, I just want to say thank you to you and the other ladies at the Disco Dolls, Leanne and Christine. I mean, you've been so supportive of me since we first met a few years ago, and it's my second show with you. So I'm really looking forward to our long-term ongoing relationship. I'm hoping you and I can do I'd love to do a show with you together.
That's an awesome idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Christine, Leanne, and I, we are honored to have your work here for a month. We really, really appreciate it. We've already had some really positive critique from it, Michelle. Keep painting, and thank you for your time. And we look forward to seeing you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
be the